The difference is a founder has something that they will believe in. They want to put their dent in the world. An entrepreneur, they're just as smart, but they don't want to die on an idea. They want to die on making money. They want to die on, taking care of their family. They want to build a business, and they're more than happy to build 2 or 3 businesses, switch businesses, because for them, it's about building the business, not about building the idea.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sam Dever Podcast, episode 118. In this episode, I speak with Ryan Edwards. Ryan is a partner in Camino 5, which is a consultancy, and we had an incredible conversation tonight, and I cannot wait for you to check it out. To watch this episode, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@thesamdeverpodcast. To listen to this podcast, be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Here's my conversation with Ryan.
The premise of the book is that all of the people who are all the inventors, all the businessmen, all the artists, all the people who aspire to be just the best at their jobs, no matter what level it is, one person says, we're tired of the world sponging off of us and most of the world doing nothing. So this person started removing all of them from the world. And gradually the world stops running and goes into like bizarre chaos, and they make these massive political systems and theories and lies to try to cover up for the fact that they can't actually do anything without these people who've left the world. So in that respect, you could say that it's playing out right now, very, very much so. Except for the fact that I don't know if anybody there's been a massive intelligent gutting from the world. It's just everything else is playing out.
So is it to promote capitalism in a way, like to say, hey, we need this type of invention and innovation? And
well, it's not necessarily capitalism, although capitalism is intertwined with it. She came from Russia. Oh. She came from communism. And so what she dubbed it as is objectivism, which would be a meshing of communism and capitalism, where the philosophy is that everybody knows their worth. And personal fulfillment is more important than money. Therefore, if you do the best you could possibly do, and the best you could possibly do is worth $80,000 a year, you're going to be happy and fulfilled on $80,000 a year. If the best that you can do is, being worth $5 million a year and being CEO of a company, then you're going to be happy and fulfilled with $5 million a year. And the rest of society understands that, and they'll support you in that. The massive flaw in objectivism is that the person making $80,000 a year has to be happy and aware and fulfilled in making $80,000 a year. And they have to, no matter how rational nor irrational their dreams are, they have to say, this is the best I'm going to be, and I'm going to be happy. There's nobody in the world I know who will do that, including me. I will always strive for more. And you don't know if you can do more or not until you're done. That's the flaw.
It reminds me that one CEO, I forgot his name, but he basically gave all of his employees a guaranteed $72,000.
Yeah,
year. Yeah. And, because that was the study showed that once people make 72 covers most people's basic needs. Mm-hmm. Probably not in Los Angeles, yeah. But at the time it was done. But anything you get past that isn't going to make you any more happier.
And the last I heard about what he's doing, and I heard about it a few months ago, an update on him, because he's very active in a lot of channels and he's at a lot of conferences and stuff. His company's going extremely well. His experiment is pretty much a success. People, everybody has a set floor in their wage. There's no set top though. And they're more productive than ever.
So he was on to something.
Yeah.
And this is one of the best intros we've ever had to this podcast. Ryan Edwards, welcome to the Sam Dever Podcast.
Why, thank you very much for having me here.
I think this is very fitting because these are the types of conversations I find myself having with you at the events I've run into you at around town in the startup tech arena. We were talking about Atlas Shrugged for anyone who, and I'm definitely going to read the book now that you've told me the premise of it.
I will tell you one thing. Read the book, avoid the movie. Probably one of the worst movies ever made.
There's a movie?
Yes, there's a movie, and it is one of the worst movies ever made.
I don't know. Is it? Did you ever see the original Dune movie?
Yes.
How was that compared to like the one that I love the ones they came out with? I've never seen the original.
I love the ones like they came out with. Now you're going to get me down a rabbit hole. I love David Lynch. So I think the original Dune movie is great. With Sting in it, come on. How can you not love that? I thought it was, and it was much more true to the book. The new one, somehow they managed in 4 hours or 3.5 hours of the two movies, they still managed to not get the point across of the plot of the book. Whereas David Lynch did it in an hour and a half.
So yeah, the first one, the 80s version, they're covering part 1 and 2 in that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the most recent ones, they did 2 movies to do part 1 and part 2 of the first book.
Yeah. And they kind of took it off in their own direction, which is fine. And my God, those movies were visually stunning and the soundtrack was phenomenal. My only regret in those movies is I did not see them in IMAX. That's my only regret. But for plot and interesting, I will stick with David Lynch.
Interesting.
I have a bias though. I'm old.
Well, and I don't know. I went down a Dune rabbit hole. Have you gone like the whole series, like all into it?
Like 30 years ago though.
Because it gets crazy.
Yeah.
Like real crazy. Like, and I went. I have read part of. I got it over there. The first book. But then someone I know that's like really into Dune goes, well, do you want to know what happens like next? And I go, okay. So I went on a YouTube journey with that. I'm like, they do what? Like it goes into beyond left field, like crazy.
And then there's the whole like series of each of the houses, how they got to the Dune point, which is the backstory of Dune.
Wow.
And they get into the whole machine revolt and stuff like that. It's just a whole crazy world.
Well, and what's interesting too, when you were reading about Dune, because this came out before Star Wars.
Yeah.
When he wrote that. So now when you're looking, and I love Star Wars, but when you're looking at the plot of Star Wars, Anakin Skywalker, or Luke Skywalker rather, in the desert goes on this journey, and then you're looking at Dune, like they go on this journey. It's definitely I can see how George Lucas pulled inspiration, I'll call it, from that.
One of the saddest moments of my young life was when I saw before the internet. I am before internet. My childhood was. I saw somebody had a VHS, a videotape, and I watched it half an hour about how everything that George Lucas stole from.
Really?
And it was sad. I'm like, what? Star Wars was not original thinking. But then he did a masterful job of weaving it all together into a whole new story. And then the brilliance of George Lucas was, hey, talking about somebody believing in their dreams so much, saying, hey, don't worry. Don't pay me enough for a living wage. Don't pay me that much money. Just give me the licensing because it'll be big.
That's what happened. So he didn't ask for a lot of money from the studio.
He got paid in licensing.
I think that paid off.
Oh, yeah. I think he ended up buying the studio.
Wow. Yeah, because at the time, I mean, you can only imagine like that time frame when those movies were coming out. You know, or the first one, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and then you know what's interesting now is because I remember going to episode 1, 2, and 3. They got really bashed back then, some of them, but now that they've done all the spin-offs and filled in the blanks to a lot of this, I recently have gone back and watched those. And I actually enjoy them a lot more because I feel like I understand the storyline a lot more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And one of my things is I watched episode 1, 2, and 3 because, you know, when episode 1 came out, when episode 4, A New Hope came out, which was the first one, I was like 6. So I remember going to see them in the movie theaters. And then so the first ones came out, I'm like, oh my God, these suck. They're not nearly as good as the old ones were. Then I had to like realize, you know what? These are really, really half kid, half adult films.
Mm.
And when I looked at it like that, I'm like, okay, yeah, these are fun. But I had to remind myself that they're not intended necessarily to only be watched and enjoyed by, 40-year-olds.
Do you ever watch any of the spinoffs they've done, like, Mandalorian, Andor, anything like that?
Okay, yes, I am a big Star Wars nerd.
Good. I am too. I love
I've
it.
watched absolutely everything.
So I got to ask you about Andor then, because
Mhm.
Andor is one of my personal. I loved it. I personally loved it.
I thought Andor was really good. I love the fact that they made the whole thing a personal journey again, because A New Hope is a personal journey with some stuff thrown in. And Andor was again a personal journey where everything else, like The Mandalorian, I loved it. Not so much a personal journey. What do you think? But,
Uh, definitely loved Grogu, Baby Yoda,
yeah,
as you're not supposed to call him, but I call him anyway. I I will say this, in spoiler alert, end of Mandalorian was it season 2 when Luke Skywalker showed up. To me, it was almost the equivalent of when Rogue One at the end, where you hear Vader
yeah,
and you see him, he destroys everything. It had that. It was like that type. As a fan, seeing that when the green lightsaber goes up, and like,
yeah.
no way, I can even get goosebumps. It's like- so yeah, but Andor, I agree with you that they really take you on the journey, and what I love most about it is they really paint the picture of the Empire. Like they really fill in that world of like, no, this is how ruthless they were. This is how it happened. They, not just this random. We only see the stormtroopers and Darth Vader all the time. It's like no, they showed you like the civilian life of that world.
Yeah, one reason why I liked it and reminded me a lot of A New Hope is because it went back to the story arc. You have the character, you have them developing over time, you have them going through moral issues and struggles, and you have them developing, failing. Just the classic story arc that's been, used for thousands of years. And that's what The New Hope is built on. A lot of Star Wars is just really fun, lasers and lightsabers, but really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, Andor had that great story arc.
Have you gone to Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland?
No.
Oh, you gotta go. You gotta go. Ride the ride the Rise of the Resistance ride, even if you have to wait 2 hours, and that's all I'll say about it.
All right. I'm going to tell you local a local haunt if you're a Star Wars fan. And this is local to North Hollywood, Van Nuys. Over on Sherman Way across from the movie theater, there's a tiki bar. And not only did he claim that they're the oldest, longest running tiki bar in the United States, but also for one weekend, one day, one night a month, they have everybody comes dressed up as Star Wars cosplay and they film the 501st podcast.
Really?
So you have all these guys, particularly Mandalorians, all in Mandalorian armor, all in a tiki bar, drinking like these great big tiki drinks off of these massive clam shells and these pineapple looking glasses, wearing full on Star Wars Mandalorian armor. Doing a podcast.
And that's here in North Hollywood, Van Nuys area?
Yep. Right. Maybe 5 minutes from here.
No idea. Eric, have you ever heard of that?
No. What's the name of that tiki bar?
The Tonga Hut.
Are you sure that's on Sherman Way and that's not on Victory?
Maybe it's not Victory. Right
Okay.
across from the movie theater.
Yes, that's going to be Victory then. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Okay, cool. I've never been there though. Huh.
They do the 501st podcast from the back of the tiki bar.
Do you go regularly?
I've been a few times.
You've been a few times. What do you wear? I gotta ask. What's your costume?
Sadly enough, I am not cool enough to have a full cosplay costume, but this is like a good Rorschach test. What would your cosplay be in Star Wars?
I'm going as a Jedi. Me
Yeah.
personally. Yeah.
I think I would have to go either as one of the bounty hunters or as a Han Solo type character.
Mm.
Yeah, I'd definitely have to go with either one of the bounty hunters or a Han Solo type character.
Okay. No, I love it. And did you ever see the Clone Wars cartoons too? Did you see any of that?
I've watched half of it, not the whole thing.
Those are good too.
Yeah.
Those are really good. One criticism, and once someone brought up this criticism, I actually agreed with it. In episode 1, they said the biggest mistake they made was killing off Darth Maul in that first episode, or that first movie. He was just an incredible character, but they said that was Obi-Wan's Vader at the time. Like that was his, like Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, that was his nemesis. He should have fought through the 3, but nope, he chopped him in half. But spoiler alert again, he doesn't really die because he appears in the cartoons, and he also appeared in a Solo movie.
And if you get into the whole universe, they developed such an incredibly good backstory for him that, you're just like, come on, gotta have more Darth Maul.
And then there's episode 7, 8, 9, but I don't think we'll spend our time talking about that.
No,
particularly episode 8 in particular.
Rogue One was good.
Oh. Rogue One was fantastic.
Yeah.
After Rogue One, though, yeah.
And Andor, they already said that is going to lead directly into Rogue One.
Oh, really?
Second season, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think the director or someone said that the storyline's going to lead up all the way to that.
And they're doing another season of Kenobi, I've heard.
Yeah. I'm a fan of it. I know a lot of people criticized it. I liked it. I enjoyed it, so I'm glad to hear that.
Look, I even liked The Acolyte. I might be the only one who did, but I actually liked The Acolyte.
I didn't catch that one yet, so. And they canceled it, right?
They canceled it. You could miss it. The only cool thing about The Acolytes is it gives a little bit more of a backstory, just a touch of, it was supposed to develop a lot more backstory into the Night Sisters.
And what's the Night Sisters?
That group of Force users who are in essence witches that aren't really evil. They're not really good. They just really want to be left alone. But they always are causing problems.
It reminds me of the ladies from Dune, wherever they are. There was one more Star Wars thing. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. It's not Clone Wars. There's a 6-episode series on Disney Plus, Tales of the Jedi, something like that. There's 6 of them, and it follows Ahsoka and, oh my gosh, forgetting his name. What is his name? Dooku, Count Dooku, before he turned to the dark side. And it filled out a ton of his backstory. And you actually find yourself understanding Dooku's point of view, why he left the Jedi Council. Mm-hmm. It was all politics.
Yeah, I didn't know about that one.
You should really check it out. It's really good.
But that's a little about what the Acolyte does too. The Acolyte really gets into how the Jedi may have been thinking they were doing good, but really they were causing problems. They were not doing good. They were flat out causing evil in the world. In the attempt to do good. And that was the point of the Acolyte. Showing that, yes, you might be trying to do good. You might think you're doing good. And it's the old adage in anything in the world. If you don't, it's one thing to listen. Listening and hearing are two completely different things. And it's one thing just to look around and listen and think you're doing right. It's another thing to hear what's really going on and do what people need.
That's a clip right there.
So watch The Acolyte if you want that message.
Well, now that you've sold me, you've sold me on it. So no, and then one other thing about Star Wars, I am glad. Although I wish Lucas, and I had heard rumor maybe he was trying to get back in, or buying it back, or I don't know if he'll buy it back, or just getting him back. I wish he would take more charge in it.
Oh, so do I.
But I am glad Disney bought it for the fact it's an unlimited bankroll there. So they are going to make everything. And I don't even know how much they make off Disneyland and like that whole thing. Like they're making so much money off of Star Wars. I'm totally fine with it because that means they're going to keep making movies and shows of it. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Good movies, good shows. Maybe a little less of the, things they're throwing out there, but I have my last Star Wars thing for you.
Oh, okay.
This is showing my age again. This is going back to the 80s. Have you ever seen the Wookiee Christmas special?
No, didn't know it existed.
Go back. You can only find it on YouTube. Go back. We should stop right now and go pull it up. It is the most, this is the type of thing that can only happen in the early 80s. It is an entire half an hour Christmas special of Chewbacca and his family doing Christmas, only talking Wookiee.
Are they singing carols and stuff like that? Or
In Wookiee. It's the type of thing that can only happen in the early 80s.
I really hope this causes a spike in the YouTube search. They go, man, we're getting a lot of views on this lately. What happened?
Oh, it's classic Christmas. There's only two things that you have to, in my opinion, only two things you have to watch in the holidays. The Chewbacca Christmas special, and then Bing Crosby and David Bowie singing Little Drummer Boy.
I haven't seen that. Is that the 80s?
Okay, now I should just leave. Because I've lost all respect for anything to do with podcasts. It was done, I think, in the 70s. And it's Bing Crosby and David Bowie just, walking out. And it was during David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust phase. And he just walks on in like a nice little suit sweater type of deal. And they just do Little Drummer Boy together.
Wow.
I think the only thing that tops that might be when Eminem and Elton John did their surprise duet at the Grammys.
They did do that, didn't they? Is this something they did live, or is it more like a pre-recorded special that came out?
It was pre-recorded. Actually, I don't know. Maybe they did do it live, but back then it was in the 70s. So, you if you didn't watch it once, they showed the same show over and over and over again all season.
Well, I think we've laid some good groundwork here as we dive into the world of tech and innovation. Well, no, Ryan, I've met you at startup events around town, and you were one of the first people. You were at the first event I ever had gone to out here.
Oh, really?
For the startup in tech. Shout out to Daria. It was her event downtown. What was it called? At the Pink Bar or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in Santa Monica?
No, downtown.
Oh, Prank. Yeah.
Prank Bar.
Yeah.
There you go. And immediately, you seem to be someone who was very well versed in the world of startup tech, entrepreneurship. I've actually quoted you on this show, paraphrased you on this show.
Oh, thank you.
A lot of valuable insights. And I actually found out that we come from a very similar part of the country, specifically central Illinois-ish area.
Yep.
So I was wondering if you could just give us a little backstory leading up to where you're at now.
I'm from farm country. And that's as exciting as that backstory gets. It's one of those places where you leave when you're 18 and your only goal is just to not go back. Yeah, no. So yeah, I left to go to college and do stuff, and, kind of didn't really go to college in the end, but did stuff, ended up in California. And I was lucky. My wife now, who I was dating at the time, wanted to go to San Francisco to get her, to finish her master's degree in arts. And it was in 1996, I think, right when the first .com boom was starting. And back then it was brand new to everybody. I didn't have a degree, but all you had to do was like show up, raise your hand and say, I'll work, because nobody knew what they were doing. Absolutely everything was brand new. And you didn't have to know how a startup worked, because every company was a startup. And so, moved to San Francisco, just lucky enough, right in that perfect window, got jobs, and then have had one foot in the startup world ever since.
We could pause right there for a second. That had to have been such an exciting time to be there during that.
It was a crazy time. I mean, I remember, I've had every story. I've had where I was working with a larger company, and this startup was going around San Francisco trying to hire anybody that they could hire. And 1,000 people said, no, we're not going to work for that little tiny startup. It would have been employee like 40 at Google. In my defense, like 1,000 people said no to them. Because back then they were trying to just sell off for as cheap as possible and get out.
They didn't even see a long-term play with it. Like, oh, we're just going to build this, sell it, make some money, get out.
Well, they tried to go up against Yahoo. And back then there was another search engine called Magellan. And they were failing. And so they tried to sell to Yahoo. Yahoo said, no, you don't have the numbers. You know, they tried to get acquired. They tried to get sold to a couple of tech companies, and everybody said, no, you don't have the numbers. They were on the verge of just walking away when one of their professors from Stanford said, you know, I'll give you enough money to go a year, but you guys got to stay into it. So they were ready to walk away. And then now they're Google.
Wow. So one professor said, hey, I'll give you the money, but you got to stick with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if, to be factual, I'm not 100%. I know there was one professor when I've heard the story told a few times, but I'm not sure if it was one lead professor and a few other investors involved. But yeah, they were told, they were ready to walk away, and they're told, no, here's the money, stick with it.
Wow. And that's why I love talking to you at these, because you have like stories like this for days. You're the one that told me the FedEx story.
Oh, where they were about to go out of, he didn't have enough money. He knew a contract was going to come in. I forget what the time period was, like a month or a month and a half. And he knew that they were going to get a big contract, but he had payroll. He had 2 payrolls to meet, and he didn't have enough to meet one. So what does he do? What any good, responsible CEO and founder does. He hit Vegas and won and made payroll and got in 2 weeks, got enough money in other ways to make it through the contracts.
Jeez. And it was shortly after that you had told me that story. I want to hear your version because I always paraphrase you, but you looked at me and you said, do you know what the difference between a startup founder and a entrepreneur is? And like, I was thinking, oh, maybe it's the same thing. You're like, no. And you had told me an entrepreneur, it's more money making, more seeing, get in, get out. Startup founder is going to die for their projects. Is that?
Wow, I said that?
Yeah, you did.
Wow,
paraphrasing you.
I do say coherent things sometimes.
I loved it because it's so true. It's so true. And I've been able to distinguish it ever since you've said that.
No, all jokes aside. The difference is a founder has something that they will believe in. They want to put their dent in the world. An entrepreneur, they're just as smart, but you know, they don't want to die on an idea. They want to die on making money. They want to die on, you know, taking care of their family. They want to build a business. And they're more than happy to build 2 or 3 businesses, switch businesses, because for them, it's about building the business, not about building the idea, which both are great. I am definitely the entrepreneur business vein, not the founder vein. I don't have the idea that I want to die on. I just love solving problems and building.
I can only imagine how many of both you've been around since those days in San Francisco, right?
I've been in startups where 6 months, over 6 months, we're just, oh my God, this is good, such a good idea. We're worth millions, to showing up and the sheriff is locking the door and saying, one startup said the sheriff was locking the door and said, you know what? You guys had no idea this was happening. We'll give you a half an hour, go in there and get your stuff out. And then we're going to come back from coffee and lock the doors.
Wow.
And like weeks later, we thought this was going to be the next $1 billion startup. We had no idea what was going on. I've been through that. And then, you know, I've not been the employees of, but I've been brought in and, you know, I've created growth strategies for 3 unicorns, and I've watched their rises. So I've been down every which journey.
I don't know if it was you or someone else. It might have been you. You're saying, talking to startup people. Yeah, most of them don't know how they're paying rent next month.
Yeah. They don't.
And that's a lot of the artist actor world too. I mean, there's a lot of commonalities between the two worlds.
Well, these days, I think half of LA doesn't know how they're paying rent next month, to tell you the truth.
True statement.
I mean, this has been such a crazy year. There's been months this year, and we have an established business and regular clients. So there's been months this year where we're like, whoa, are we going to survive the year or not? So I think, as part of, there should be a nice saying about this. It used to be 20 years ago, there was security in getting a job. There was actually some security in being a small local business. These last few years, ever since maybe 10 years, it is almost as insecure being a full-time employee as it is being a founder or working for a startup or being an actor.
So you might as well do your own thing almost.
Yeah. And if your thing is working for a company so you can do something else on the side, great. Just don't. My advice to my own kids is just don't pick the job because you think it's a safety net. There are no more safety nets, in my opinion.
No, I think you're right. I mean, more and more, well, and even those localized businesses, as technology increases and new things that, I hate to say it, and I'm a fan. I like Jeff Bezos and Amazon. I ordered something yesterday. It was on my doorstep within 2 to 3 hours. It's no longer, oh, it's getting here the next day. Like here in LA, at least, they're like, oh, do you want it today? I'm like, today? And I understand, like, yeah, me doing that, I'm not going to certain stores because of that. But it's like, gosh, it's really convenient. It works.
I guess I would say the safety net is look at you. Look at what you're doing. 20 years ago, did you say, I want to be a podcast host?
No.
But 20 years ago, did you know you want to do acting?
Entertainment of some sort.
Yeah. And in essence, what is entertainment and acting? I would say communicating, expressing, creating almost a two-way conversation between you and the camera sometimes was podcasting.
That.
So the safety net is understanding, to me, I would say the safety net is understanding what your passion and drive is and letting it lead you, be the guiding light down your life journey. You're podcasting now. You were acting, you're podcasting and acting, but in essence, it's all the same passion and dream for you. Just the journey is taking you this way, journey is taking you that way, as opposed to just trying to grab onto a safety net and hope it just doesn't go away, and at least not having the passion behind it.
See, I love this because I'm sure that has related in the startup world. I'm sure you've seen people that started out thinking that their company was going to be this one thing, and then it taking a totally different direction.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one thing I'm talking to a lot of entrepreneurs I'm gathering is that is a skill to be able to, whatever you thought this thing was going to be, when you see that it's presenting itself as something else or the market is telling you it's something else, to be able to like, okay, not that way. We're going to go this way now. I'm sure you've seen companies that have pivoted, I guess would be the right word.
And part of it is you have to understand which type of founder are you. Are you a founder that has an idea and you want what I call a product founder? You have the idea, you love your product, and damn it, you're going to build that product no matter what. FedEx, he had an idea and he could have pivoted, but he was going to build that product no matter what. And Steve Jobs was that way too. We're going to build that product no matter what. Then you look at Bill Gates. Bill Gates, had a passion for he had a passion for computers and wanted to build that. But yeah, and he kept Microsoft down a road, but he pivoted. He wasn't going to live and die on one operating system. He was going to take the best and integrate it. And he was just going to develop the idea of what he wanted to do. Whereas Steve Jobs, he was living and dying by his vision of that product. So you have those two types of founders. Then you have the founder that's really a CEO. And those are not that common in the startup world because most founders live and die in the product. A lot more founders, but not all of them, also will live and die in the idea and pivot the idea as long as it stays alive. A few founders are really CEOs. And all that they want to do is they want to build an empire. And so you have those three founders. Most of the founders are product-led founders. And I think I went down a tangent there and I lost my train of thought.
No, I loved it. I've never heard that breakdown ever. What's founder out of those three? I don't know if stronger is the right word. Which ones do you see become the most successful usually out of those? Or is it just different across the board?
The CEO founder type can definitely have the most potential for success. There's very few of them. Very, very few people are born into that, are naturally into that role when they start.
Would that be like an Elon Musk? Would you consider him a CEO founder? Like he's kind of like a hybrid. He's kind of everything a little bit.
Don't get me going on Elon Musk. He's never founded anything. He's the master of the takeover. He's the master of going in and taking over a company. Tesla, he went in, it was already around. He went in, he took it over, he built it, and he pushed the founders out. So he's not really a founder as much as he sees potential, and he is a master of, I will do anything to see that potential through. But he doesn't, the one thing that founders have, and I'm not a founder. I've created a few companies. I run services, but I haven't really created a product or anything like that. One of the things that a founder has is a founder has an idea and the need to bring that idea into the world. Say what you will about some people love Steve Jobs, some people don't like Steve Jobs. There's all kinds of camps on him, but say what you will about him. He was fanatical about finding people to work with that can bring his idea into the world. Elon Musk, he's really great at saying, oh my God, you came up with a great idea. Now get out of my way. I'm going to build into something bigger. There's a difference.
Kind of like, have you ever seen the movie The Founder with Michael Keaton?
Michael Keaton about McDonald's?
Yeah, about McDonald's. I mean, Ray Kroc, went to San Bernardino, saw their operation, be like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
But we could, in a way that, would McDonald's have ever gotten as big as it was if it wasn't for Ray Kroc? Probably not.
No, not at all.
It's almost like laws of nature type of thinking.
And those two guys, I forgot the McDonald's brothers, I guess you could call them. The whole concept that changed not just the food industry, but a lot of industries, hospitality, of having that assembly line efficient mentality of replication. That was all them. Ray Kroc just said, wow, I can take that and sell it to the world and push them out.
And whereas I'm just going off the movie, I'm sure there's a book that fills in a lot more details, but it seemed like one brother was for it. One's like, nah, we don't really need to do that. Let's just stay how
small.
Things are. But it's almost like you need sometimes that visionary, or just those visionaries come in and they see it. Oh, we can turn this into a huge thing.
Elon, no one in the world, like him or not, no one in the world would possibly argue that Elon Musk is not one of the greatest visionaries of the last quarter century. There's just there's no argument in that.
Especially when he just did that stuff with the rocket ship.
That was crazy.
And he owns Twitter or X, or rather.
Yeah.
It's like, man.
Yeah.
I watched an interview with a snippet from someone that works closely with him. I wasn't sure what his exact role was, but he said that Elon, he has a great communication with engineers on every project. Like there's no hierarchy of like talking to 10 people before. He like talks to them directly, and he's quick with decisions, like quick.
I know a few people from Tesla, and they will all say that. They will all absolutely say that he will talk to the engineers, but they will also say that. And there's a line between, and there's an interesting line between being visionary and being high and crazy. And they'll all say that there are times, man, when Elon Musk crosses that line big time, where he will just ask for things to be done that you're just like, no, it can't be done, and they don't do it. They'll work there like crazy and never achieve it. And there's that a really great, and that's probably the difference between the visionary, I think. Never thought about this before. The visionary and the founder, because the founder sees that line because they're so much in tune to the product. Like look at Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg. They were both so in tune to the product and lived the product in a way that Elon Musk never did because he wasn't the founder, that they knew where that line was instinctively and were able to understand when their teams came back and said, we can't do that. And they understood that, and they're able to find other solutions. Where, now, for example, with Tesla, their charging division's gone because of that.
What do you mean, like charging stations?
Yeah,
what happened with that?
They basically shut down to a skeleton crew. They're no longer rolling out their charging station products.
Really?
Yeah, because they just put so much into trying to develop it and build it, and they just couldn't make the technology match what they needed to do, and they needed to take those resources and put them elsewhere then.
That's interesting because I had heard, and this is maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, that was going to be one of the things, because everyone's having electric cars now.
Mm-hmm.
But they said what Elon was doing, he was concentrating on these charging stations, kind of like being the gas stations. Yeah. And that's where he was kind of like the whole real estate McDonald's thing. I'm not explaining it well, but he basically was getting the real estate in I may not have everyone, they might not all be driving my car, but they're going to be going to my charging station type of philosophy.
Yeah. No, yeah, he was going hard down that road, but he kind of took a U-turn on that.
Interesting.
It's just with all the projects, my understanding is, and having no more insider information than what I read online, my understanding is, just all the projects that the requirements just couldn't be met. The tech requirements that they're trying to push through with the budgets and everything just couldn't be done. So they decide to put their resources elsewhere.
And you seem like to be a great person to ask this question to. You hear those stories of like that founder who is going to go to the very end, doesn't matter. We hear the success stories. Have you seen it where someone, what's that line? What's that line where you got to keep pushing, or, hey, this isn't going to work? Type of.
Yeah.
Does it come down just to dollars and cents? Like if it's not.
Look, I've heard stories. I haven't seen this firsthand, but I've heard the stories enough to know the truth of like the person who, one story I heard, and this happened in LA, was there was a startup and they were pushing hard for 2 years, burned through their entire runway. And, they were living off of credit cards, living off of fumes, and they maybe had 2 weeks left. And the founder decided to say, screw it, we're going to stop. And we're going to take the 2 weeks money and I'm going to go on a vacation and see you later. And then Nobody could find the founder. And about a week after that, a big contract came knocking. They went to the investors and the accelerators saying, hey, we want to give you guys a contract now. Nobody could find the founder because he quit and like went to Bali or someplace. You know, a week. He had 2 weeks of runway. He was going to make it by a week and he quit. Then I've heard countless stories of founders where everyone's just like, it's done, it's done, it's done. And they took it to the very last drop. Didn't work out. Happens all the time. I don't think there's any fine line between to be a true founder requires a bit of insanity. A touch of, and I'll define insanity as personal belief, determination, and idealism. And you have to way over index on that. And, it requires that type of insanity to be a true founder. Because you're going to drive it to the very end and you don't know until the day it's over if you went too far. Look at acting. How many actors are that way?
Most of them. Out here in LA, most of them.
Who's the guy from Game of Thrones? Peter.
Eric, do you know his name?
Dinglish?
This little guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at his story?
Now that you're bringing it up, I think it's something crazy. Tell me.
I don't know all the details, but it was something crazy that he was living in Brooklyn back in the day when Brooklyn was dangerous to live in. And he was getting offered acting jobs, but they were all acting jobs to play like the elf in a film. And he's like, no, I will be a serious actor or I won't act. And he was living in poverty. He was going home in the wintertime, couldn't get the heat, didn't have heat always. And he was getting offered like all these small jobs here and there. It's like, nope, I'm going to be an actor. And just years of that and years of that. And just finding a role here or a role there. Eventually, he's now made it not as a funny, comical little actor, but as a, legitimate, respected actor in his own right.
Which led him to a bunch of roles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did he know all along? His commencement speech, I forgot at what college, is incredible. Because he talks about it. Did he know that he was going to make it? No. He did not. He actually thought he wasn't. But he was just like, all I know is I'm not going to live my life thinking I could have made it. He's like, that's what got him through the cold winter nights with no heat in New York.
These are just the stories that these pump me up.
Yeah.
It's almost like this reassurance, like, okay, there's a few more insane people out there, but you're right. You really do have to, Tai Lopez said this saying, he talks about your mind has to drop out of society. Like you really have to, because society is going to try everything around you to say, hey, what are you doing? Like, that's crazy. That's stupid. Go take the safe bet. But like you're saying, well, now there's really not as much safe bet.
There isn't.
So you might as well.
Look, don't get me wrong. If your passion is, competitive crochet, by all means, get a 9-to-5 job that allows you to chase your passion. But that's because you know what your passion is and everything else in life is a means to an end. But for example, for you, if your passion is a particular form of expressing your ideas and communicating that requires a one-to-one interaction with either the camera or another person, maybe the best choice for you is not to get a 9-to-5 job because that impedes you chasing your passion. So just do what facilitates your passion, that chase. And just know there's absolutely no promise, no guarantee that you will reach that. Because what's the Constitution say? We are all, we have the right for the pursuit of happiness. Nowhere does it say we're going to get it.
Oh, I love that. Back to San Francisco for a second. Why did it all happen there, the startup scene? Was there a particular, was it just a coincidence? Everybody was there, or were like tech type companies already up there? Because I guess Microsoft and Apple were already up there, right? Was that?
It started in the 50s
Oh, in the 50s.
because that is, and I don't know why it started in the 50s, but that is where a lot of the very early tech companies were. And that's like back when you were on the cutting edge of radio, stuff like that. That was considered tech. So it was because those started in the 50s and then the 60s, and the Hewlett Packards were there. Hewlett Packards are around forever. And so that's where the URL and people like Steve Jobs and Wozniak worked, or no, not Steve Jobs, but Wozniak worked at Hewlett Packard. And that's where he got a lot of his, he brilliant person, but that's where he got a lot of his practical training on how to, how to do things in a business way. I think he's only there for like, a year or something like that, but still. So that's where a lot of that happened. And because of that, and then in Seattle, because there was already the infrastructure in Seattle, because of all of the defense and all of the, you know, airplane stuff, that the schools there had more infrastructure and had computer labs and such that didn't exist in other places, that Gates got a job as a high school kid at a computer lab. So I don't know why originally San Francisco and Seattle and those hubs were created, but because that got started in the 50s, the schools started to have the infrastructure built into them, and the entry level jobs were there to give you that training, and that's what created those hubs in the late 90s.
And then now, what would you say about it now, to where it's at? I mean, is it still the place?
It's not the place anymore. Well, let me rephrase that. It is the place for cash. It is the highest, it's still one of the highest concentrations, not the highest concentration anymore, but one of the highest concentration of investor dollars. And I'm going to get my actual numbers wrong, but this ballpark right. Like 6-7 years ago, it used to be every unicorn was from San Francisco, a couple from New York, a smattering from Austin, and a few other places. Now, the last time I saw, there was unicorns from 22 cities around the world. Community is definitely a big plus. Infrastructure and ecosystem is definitely a big plus, but they exist all over the world now. You don't have to be in San Francisco. You don't have to be in one of the hubs. It helps sometimes. It's definitely where the checks are, but you can make it anywhere.
Is that just due to technology and things like, Zoom and communication and people being able to connect with people just a lot quicker now?
That, like back in the late 70s, you had to be in an area with that infrastructure that was physically there, like the high school with the computer labs that you can get a job at, and play around with and stuff. Now, education, knowledge is everywhere. Knowledge is cheap. To use AI, we were talking about AI before the show, to use AI, all that you need is the knowledge on how to program, $40 a month to get access to OpenAI. All that you need is internet access and the knowledge, and you can download Meta's Llama open source AI model, which is insane. Anywhere in the world, you can do that. even 10 years ago, you had to be in very specific locations for that.
Perfect segue to AI. Because when I first met you, it's been over 6 months, 7 months ago, because I wanted to explore the startup tech scene out here. Every single person's talking about AI. I remember that was like all the conversations I was in that first March, April of this year. People talking about, we're building this AI company, we're doing this, everyone's looking for money too, to fund this AI company. Now, I feel like it's still there, but I don't feel like it's as ramped up as much. I don't know, but I was curious just to get your thoughts in general. just the AI scene overall, and then also where do you see this going here? Because I know there's a lot of hype right now,
There's
but is it going to decline? What do you think?
there's a massive trend away from being an AI company to being a company that uses AI in the broader sense of creating a product or offering a service or creating value. So a year ago, it was just enough to say, hey, we're AI. Look, I'm an AI water bottle. And that was enough to get funding, to go to market and to sell. Now, it's like, okay, you're an AI water bottle, but that means nothing to me. And here's a funny story that ties into this water bottle. I was at a LA Tech Week event on 2 weeks ago, Friday, and it was a blockchain cryptocurrency event and a pitch event. One company pitched a water bottle. And they talked about how it is a biodegradable water bottle with two layers, a biodegradable plastic and then a coconut wrapper outside with sugar interlaced in it, because the sugar interlaced with it encourages a more rapid biodegradation. And how the chemical composition of the inner layer was slightly different to allow for a quicker decomposition. How did this one guy create this? AI. He used AI modeling to create it. And they were the only company to get a serious conversation off of that, out of all of these tech companies, all of these AI and blockchain and crypto companies. They got a multi-million-dollar investment, not deal, but conversation going. Their water bottle was created from, they used AI. They could not have done it without AI. So that's the uses of AI that are taking off. How do we use AI to make a better product? Not how do we make our product AI?
That makes a lot of sense what you just said, because they had an actual product, like something that actually, it's not just coming up with something and putting AI at the end of your name or in the front of it.
And they could never have made that product without AI. They couldn't have made that product 5 years ago. They couldn't have probably made that product 3 years ago. So that was a completely AI enabled product, but it wasn't an AI product.
So have investors or VCs, are they starting to see through a lot of that now? Like, and be able to say, okay, guys, we know it's AI, but what does it do?
Outside of the big boys in the AI, the big boys being, OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, all of them, the chip peoples and all those players and such. Outside of them, funding in AI products itself are down almost 70% year over year. But funding in products that use AI for some purpose, but that's not the product, is rising. Part of the reason is a lot of those AI products, people are just like, okay. And the reality, you're just doing an API call. You're just, paying your $40 a month, or, for an API call at that level is a lot more enterprise. But you're just paying your money to OpenAI. You're doing the API call. You build your product on that, which means to the investors, three things can happen. One thing can happen is OpenAI can turn off the API call at any moment and your company's out of business. You simply don't have a product anymore. And there's a history of that happening with other API calls. Second thing is, you know what? It's really easy for someone else to come in and make a competitor product and maybe throw in one or two more features, because, you're just using open calls, and programming these days is cheap. And the third worry that they're going to have, that they think it can happen, is what if one of the bigger companies come in because it's so easy and duplicate your product and run you out of business? And that's starting to happen. A lot of companies are going out of business that were thriving for a short time because of a Copilot. And Copilot is the Microsoft tool that allows you to organize your emails and stuff like that. So a lot of the third-party products that were out there doing that were specialized on doing that for Outlook, are now out of business.
That's because Microsoft started doing it.
Yeah. Microsoft created an agent that does that and a lot more. And if you're using Microsoft products, you get it.
So is there any way to protect, what would you do? I mean, is there any way to patent what you're doing with AI, or is it one of those things where this is so genie out of the bottle, if you will, and Wild West maybe would be another way to put it? Like, how do you?
You can patent it if you're creating a product that by itself is unique, that uses AI. You can't patent the AI because it belongs to somebody else. Like that water bottle. They can patent the water bottle because it is a product that's unique, that was created using AI. But if you're a customer service chatbot, chances are no, you cannot patent that because you're a customer service chatbot. Customer service has always existed. Chatbots have been around for a very long time. And you're just using a different way to power the back end of it. So it all depends on, are you building a product that has a specific purpose and that's new and unique? Or are you, AKA a founder? Or are you an entrepreneur that just sees a business that you can create that uses AI, knowing that your business can be gone in 2 or 3 years? It's really that question.
And where do you see it all going from here? I know it's probably hard for us to, because it's so rapid on how it's working, but
It's kind of funny. I was at an event last weekend, all weekend long, where the person, very successful person running the event, kept on talking about how in 3 years, AI was going to take over every single job. And that figure out how to make your money in the next 2 to 3 years, because after that, we're all unemployed. So I hear that scenario a lot. I also hear the scenario a lot where this is just another Web3. This is another blockchain. This is another VR, AR hype. And we're all going to realize that it's going to go away sometime soon. And there's not going to be anything real about it. And I've been at events where I hear that being preached. All that I've learned in my gray hair long career since 1997 is when you have two sides preaching something so extreme, the truth is always ends up somewhere right in the middle. So like you have that company, that water bottle company, they couldn't have built that without AI. So AI is not going to go away. But do I think AI is going to take everyone's job like some people say? No. The quote that my focus in life is marketing and market research. And that Sam Altman came out about a year ago and said that 97% of all marketing is going to be done with AI. And here's the funny thing about that quote. How much of marketing 4 years ago do you think was done with AI?
4 years ago?
Yeah, how much do you think?
I don't think that much.
About 90%.
Okay, quite a bit.
Yeah. So what he's saying is like, so, we're going another 5% is going to be taken up by AI.
Well, define, I guess, like AI having assisted people in doing the marketing.
A large part of marketing is digital ads.
Okay.
Digital ads runs on a system called RTB, or real-time bidding. That's been AI driven for almost a decade.
Okay.
So most of the money that flows through marketing somehow or the other has for a long time been AI driven. So part of it is when people say stuff like that, I'm like, okay, it's been that way for a long time. I mean, the first time that I used a generated ad was 6 years ago. And I wasn't new to the game back then either. I was just catching on to it. I've been around for a while. Just that they were called dynamic creative instead of generated ads. But It's the exact same technology. So, will it change things? Yes. Will people lose some jobs? Yes. Will it create other jobs? Yes, it always does. But will it cause the massive layoffs that we're all predicting? I don't think so. Will it go away? I really hope not.
Does throwing robotics mixed with AI change any of the outcomes potentially?
I don't know.
It gets kind of crazy when you start doing that.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, Elon Musk grabbed the headlines with his robot show, which kind of wasn't not real. He was better the last time he did it. Last time he did it, he actually had people in costumes.
Really?
Like,
As robots?
yeah, what he did a couple years ago. This time it was real robots, but a lot of it was very staged and faked positions and such like that. If you want to look at robots, which is crazy and doesn't get much play, look into an Amazon warehouse. It's crazy what they're doing in there.
As far as like picking the product and
running the products. You could order a product and it doesn't touch a human hand sometimes until it's taken from the car to your door.
that's just until the drones come.
Yeah. Not every time, but sometimes it's that way now. And they have whole warehouses that are largely run by robotics.
I believe that because, and actually I have something that I thought would be here by now, but this is probably by the time we're done, it's going to be outside that door, but
Yeah.
they mess up sometimes, but not often.
Yeah.
It's rare. It really is. It's pretty amazing. And when I was walking the Amazon return to Whole Foods, I'm like, he's a genius. I'm reading his book, Invent and Wonder, right now, too, where it's just basically him. You get to read every letter to the shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
That guy has had this, the way he thinks, just that long-term vision. I'm jumping all over the place, but I go to Whole Foods to drop off my thing and I go, well, yeah, I need some stuff in Whole Foods. And I'm like, I'm like, so smart. They just got me because I'm ordering off Amazon again, but now you're going to get me for $100 grocery bill in Whole Foods.
Yeah. And remember how long have you been living in LA?
Be 7 years February.
So you might remember when before Amazon bought Whole Foods, it was referred to as whole paycheck.
Yeah.
Now, you know what? Whole Foods has a lot of staples in there that are the same cost as any grocery store. But man, I'm going through there and I'm like, okay, I'm saving money today. I'm buying my black beans. I'm buying my potatoes. All this is the same price. Oh, wait. Fish. You know what? I got all this for a good price. I'll spend an extra $10 on my salmon. Gets me every time.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right because they are reasonable on a lot of prices in there. Another go-to that's the Amazon Fresh store. I go to the one right off here off Lancashire because it's by the gym I work out at. They're priced really well and they actually have a great meat selection. Like I never thought that, but then I just started, they can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. But going all over the place. But when you tell me about the efficiency of the robotics in those centers, those warehouses they're doing, I believe it.
But what's interesting is Amazon tried really hard to do personless grocery stores, little small stores. They did an experiment, several locations around the country. Complete failure. People just didn't respond to it well. They didn't like it well. Just didn't work for people. And they started closing them down. And not because of what you would think, like people are trying to steal it, stuff like that. It's just there's a certain threshold you can't pass. Yeah, sure. Okay, fine. Let's get all the warehouses working with robots. I don't see that. I don't interact with that. But when I go to the grocery store, when I go out, people are still like, I don't want it to be an impersonal experience. I want to see people. Even if I don't talk to them, I want to be around them.
Oh, so the experiments, that was going to be all robots.
Well, just, some robots stalking, but you walked in, you put it in your bag. You put it in the bag had a the basket had a bag in it. That's what I was looking for. The basket had a bag in it and stuff like that. And you just, as you put it in the cart or as you walked out, you got charged. So there's absolutely no human interaction. People just didn't like that.
Yeah, I like human interaction in my grocery store. Like when I ask where something's at, it's like, hey, what aisle, brother? Like, where do we go? It's an
Yeah.
experience.
We were doing at a place where we're doing a thought experiment with a group of people. And it was, what do you think will be the industry that you could leverage AI in the next few years that would boom? That's going to boom because of AI. And the interesting thing is after half an hour of talking about AI and how AI is going to affect pharmaceuticals with personalized medication, which would be great, how AI can affect agriculture, how AI can affect all these things. The number one boom industry everybody in the group came up with is the boom industry that is personal interaction, because the idea that they came up with was people are going to pay a premium for personal interaction, everything from real estate agents to entertainment to all these things that people were going to start leveraging. That was going to be the boom industry, personal interactions.
That's interesting. It reminds me, as we talked a lot of the acting community, like what AI is going to be doing to film and acting. And we've had a couple people say it, that there's going to be more of a need or a desire for people to go see live theater,
Mm-hmm.
because all the movies and stuff are going to be AI or whatever happens with that. Because people are going to want to see those real people on stage. And I went to my first immersive theater experience and it was incredible. And I'm like, yeah. So what you say with that premium human experience,
Mm-hmm.
that's really interesting. So if I want a real estate agent, oh, you can pay a premium, you can actually get a person.
Well, yes, if I'm moving to a town and I'm going to a 10,000 unit or 1,000 unit building, and I'm just like, okay, that unit, that unit called Fred, the Fred unit, you have 500 of those, 30 are available. I'll take one of those. I like the layout. Sure, that can be done with an AI because that's just a commodity. But when I'm buying a home, when I'm laying down in LA, $1 million for a home, because let's face it, that's what a home costs in a bad part of LA these days. I want to, and I'm comparing between 3 different homes, and I'm going to live there for the next 20 years. I want a person. I want somebody that I can talk to, I can ask questions to, I can get a personal response from, I can read, I can feel better about my decision from.
It reminds me too, to be great at what you do. Because I think what I see a lot of people with AI, they think, well, AI is just going to do everything for me. I don't have to think anymore. I don't have to do anything anymore. And it's like, so I love what you're saying with that, because it says, no, there's going to be value in what you do still. Just, you want to be one of the ones that's really great at it, not.
Yeah, and that's what I think is going to happen even to film and acting. Yes, you're going to have a whole lot of AI driven stuff, particularly on places like Netflix. And I'll admit it, I love a lot of stuff that can easily be done with AI. Star Wars, a lot of the Star Wars stuff probably can be done better with AI than with live action people. All the cheesy sci-fi I watch can be done. But then, there's the better stuff where I want to watch it, where I just don't want to turn my mind off for half an hour, but I want to think. And I want that to be with people. There's something different about those little moments. One of my favorite movies, of all my favorite movies, is Blade Runner. And the scene I'm going for in Blade Runner?
I don't.
There's the scene when it's raining, and one of the guys looks up, and he just looks up and he goes, "It's like teardrops in the rain." Completely impromptu, not in the script.
Oh, you know what? I think I had heard that. Yeah. Are you talking about the end of the movie? Is that at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely impromptu, not in the script. In an AI generated world, that would never happen.
What'd you think of the new Blade Runner they did? Not to get off topic, it just reminded me of the Ryan Gosling version.
Gosling one?
Yeah.
I loved it personally. Soundtrack was great.
Yeah.
Visuals were great. It was a little slow, but I loved it.
Jared Leto was in that too, right? I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, he was.
Then Harrison Ford made his appearance. Yeah.
His cameo. Yeah. I love that movie personally.
So about what you do, Camino 5 agency, is that the correct terminology? What is that? What do you do? I know we've talked a lot. You're obviously around startups and entrepreneurs a lot, marketing based, driven. Could you go in a little more detail on what all you do with that?
We're a boutique consultancy, and by saying boutique, we're kind of small. It's the partners in it are me, my partner Frances, who's also my wife. And what we do is we do market research and we do consumer journeys. And we have our one foot in the corporate world. We work with a lot of large corporate clients. We'll work with people in healthcare. We work with a SaaS HR company that does a few $1 billion of revenue. We'll work in e-commerce, stuff like that, but existing companies that are established. Then we have a foot in the startup world. Well, particularly, we'll work with a lot of accelerators, every once in a while directly with a startup. And they'll bring us in to teach startup, what they're selling, because most startups have a product, but they have no idea what they're selling. And then teach them what a brand is, how to create a brand, and then how to go to market. And so we've done that for 15 years also. We do the corporate side because the startup side doesn't pay well.
There's a lot of IOUs or equity stakes, things like that.
We have equity in a few companies that we've always known isn't probably going to pay out. But, it's great to work in that world. One of the reasons why I still work in that world is because I like working with people. I like working with people trying to figure things out. It helps me the other side because it keeps me really in touch with all these new ideas and new ways to do things. Like for the HR company I referenced, we had a conversation with them a few months ago for 2 months, and we're talking to them about how AI will affect the HR space and concerns and problems. And we couldn't do that if we weren't on the other side, knee deep in AI startups for 2 years. So one side helps inform the other side. And then it's great to bring down the pipe also from the corporate side. Hey, I understand you're doing it this way, and that's great. But just keep in mind, when you want to scale to a large company, here's the reality. So you have to make sure that you're at least are aware of that before you make these decisions. And then I had an A, B, and I had a C reason why. And now I totally blinked. Oh yeah, I have a C reason why. And this is the lecture I give to all the cohorts and startups I work with. It's the whole classic, understand why you're doing what you're doing. For me, I have 3 daughters. And the world arguably is not a better place than it was when I was born. Granted, I'm from Central Illinois. So when I was a kid, you got out on your bike and you're in the morning, you didn't come back into the night, and it was free range. Even in LA, it was a different place back then. Now the world's a worse off place. Global warming, all kinds of homeless problems in LA, stuff like this. And I know that I don't have the skill set to change any problem, to solve any problem. That's just not who I am. I don't have that skill set. but I do have the skill set to help a company who can make those changes. Like I made a significant impact on the water bottle company, who they're talking about going to Costco, so that's going to change the world, and I had a significant impact on them. So I can impact the companies that will impact the world. So that's another reason why I work with startups, and I can honestly say, we sit down with accelerators, bring us in to work with cohorts, and we'll sometimes talk to 20, 30 startups for 3-hour sessions for 3 days straight. So that's 10 hours with an extra hour here or there. So that's 10 hours with the startups. In the last 10 years, I can honestly say we've worked with talked to over 600 startups. So I like to think we've at least made an impact on 20 of those that will have an impact on the world. And that's the other big reason why I like working with startups.
I love that. And it just seems to be an energy about it too. There's an energy, there's an enthusiasm. And I like your perspective of having the foot in the corporate world, but having another foot over here, because I could definitely see how they play off each other.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Why 7 months ago you said that you decided that you really wanted to dive into the startup world in LA?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Why did you decide?
I had 20 more questions lined up. I guess we'll throw it out. Few reasons. First reason being, so it's been over a year ago, I became a free agent as far as job goes in the corporate world. And, I had been looking around and I'm like, what, maybe I should just get with like a startup, because I myself am a startup in any creative entrepreneurial project I've ever done. So let me just go out and let me just see what's out there. Let me just start meeting people. But what happened was, you're the first person I'm telling this to.
Well, me and everyone else.
Well, everyone else, yeah. But I started telling me, I do a podcast. Every conversation when I go out now, as soon as the podcast is mentioned, we just start talking about the podcast. And I realize, I'm like, okay, people at least have an interest in that. Maybe let me just, and it was around that time I made the decision. I had made the decision around that time, like, let me just go all in, if you will, into this. And let me just see where this goes, for lack of a better term. Not really an investor probably wouldn't appreciate that type of business plan, but it's like, let me just explore this. Let me just see where this goes. And from there, and Eric here, I'm like, hey, do you think we can do 1 episode a week? Can we crank these out? And the workflow him and I have, we just really have been doing it for, be going on 7 months, doing an episode a week. So the first was, maybe there's a job opportunity, or maybe I can get on board with somebody who needs a sales guy, marketing type guy, promotional type guy, something like that. But I really let go of that because I didn't even have conversations with a couple of people that they'd be like, oh yeah, we're looking for we need someone in sales. I'm like, well, yeah, no, I did that for a long time and yada, yada. And it's kind of like deer in headlights. I'm like, yeah, but I do this podcast. Oh, a podcast. So I'm like, all right, let's just go with that then. So through that, and then I got, so that was the first reason, was that. The second reason was back in Las Vegas when I lived there for almost 8 years. I did another show back there. It was called The Social Media Show. And this is back when social media is what AI is right now. It was new. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's launching social media companies. And this is back when Tony Hsieh, rest in peace, was doing the Downtown Project. There were a lot of startups coming into Vegas at that time. So we'd interview social media people, but then we started going downtown and interviewing a lot of the tech scene. So I was meeting, and I was 26, 27 at the time. I started meeting all these startup founders and tech people. We went to, what was it called? The 48-hour startup things where people go. It's like a 48-hour film project, except it's a 48-hour. You bring a startup team, you come up with a business, and on the last night, everyone pitches.
The hackathons and such?
It's kind of like that. Yeah. So it got me around like a lot of entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And I always enjoyed that scene. And I myself, I would call myself, I'm that guy that constantly taking swings at stuff. Like I don't give up, even though some things may not have worked out. I'm like, I think Mark Cuban said, you just need to be right one time. So that's kind of you just got to be right once. You may strike out 1,000 times. All you need to do is hit that. Alex Hormozzi says that too. He's like, in business, you just need one grand slam and you're good. But so I like being around that. I love Steve Jobs. I love entrepreneurs. And so that was the second reason. And I say the third reason, what kept me coming back, is I started getting good people for the podcast. So I went in with this just like, hey, let's just see where this goes. And that's one thing I do love about Los Angeles. There's so many people here. It's so diverse. Even outside the genres we're talking about, you can go pick some topic in town that you want to start learning about. There's a group for that somewhere out here. So that in a nutshell, yeah, that's what happened.
Now, a question I always love to hear. I love to ask people who are going down their entrepreneur or founder journey is, what went through your head? And what did that moment feel like when you realized I am taking that blind leap? That here's the line that there's just no going back from. That you've had it in your head for a while, you've been planning on it, you've even committed to it, but you haven't done that step yet where you're like, okay, there's no going back from here.
I can tell you exactly what that is. It's when you start going from paying cash with Zelle to paying credit card with PayPal. And that is the truth, brother. That is the moment where I'm like, all right, we're doing this. It's different when you got the cash reserves and you're paying. It's a completely different. But when you're like, all right, this is happening. But if I wouldn't have done that, we wouldn't have gotten as far as what we've got.
Yeah.
There's no way, because in that time span, we've evolved, we've grown, we've had certain videos go viral in the short form content. So it's one of those things where like, okay, like, you got to be aware, like you have to be paying attention. But like I tell Eric all the time, it's like, there's the mountain. I'm in the plane and we're pulling up and I say, save yourself, hit the eject button. I'm going, he'll be like, no, I'm holding on with you, so but that was the moment where, but it really though, a mindset shift though, and being around all these different, and I've heard you speak before, I've heard other people speak. I feel like I'm in good hands. Like I'm not afraid of it. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm talking to other people talking about, oh, I don't know how I'm getting rent next month. Or people are, yeah, there is no more weekends. Like it is 7 days a week, but your mind starts to shift toward that. So now it's not as intimidating anymore when you start to take your mind out of the 9-to-5 safety net. It's like, okay, no, this is the game. If you want to win, you got to play. You may lose, but you're not going to win unless you don't play.
And you just answered better than I did a question that you asked me a while ago. The difference between San Francisco and everywhere else, or do you have to be in San Francisco? The difference is San Francisco always has been and probably always will be about, in the end of the day, can we turn you into a unicorn? And there is that everywhere in the world. But like in LA, for example, there truly is a community that is in it, that are there to support, that are there to help, that people, oddly enough, yes, they're in it to try to be the next unicorn. Everybody wants to be that. But there's more willingness to be part of the community and to give and to help. For example, almost a year ago to date, we were working with one startup, and we helped the startup, redefine their brand, do their holiday strategy, stuff like that. Right now, I'm working with another startup, and they're trying to enter the wellness market, and they're struggling. And I happened to see the first startup at an event over Tech Week. And I'm like, hey, you know what? You should talk to this person. I'll hook you guys up during WhatsApp. Now they're doing co-events. Now we're talking about doing a bundle because they're both in the same wellness space. Full knowing that the newer startup really, honestly, isn't bringing that much to the table. But they're like, you know what? It's a good idea for us to bundle and we'll help you out. There's more of that feeling in LA, Austin, Chicago, St. Louis, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, all of their all of their startup communities in Vegas, has more and more of that developing feel than San Francisco has.
That's interesting. So San Francisco's more go for the money
It's more of an industry. There's a saying going around right now that, particularly in San Francisco and in other places too, startups are the product.
And also to add on to what you asked me, it's the energy.
Mm-hmm.
Just the energy. I mean, I leave those things amped up. Like I leave them, especially I run into you, start talking to you for a while. You tell me stories about FedEx. And I think you told me about Bezos too. You said the reason why they survived the .com. He talks about that in the shareholder meeting. He's like, one of the letters he begins, he's just like, yeah, we went from a 117 stock price down to like 6 or whatever it was. Like that hurt. He goes, anyway, here's what we're doing. And like, he just keeps going. But like, so they had the cash to be able to take that hit.
They were just, it's like you said, what Hormozy says, you gotta, all you gotta do is hit the Grand Slam once, and all you gotta do is be lucky once. But the thing is, I'll take that back. You just don't have to be lucky once. You have to know what to do once you hit lucky. Think about the Grand Slam analogy is everybody knows, okay, fine, you're right around the bases. But if you're lucky once, lots of people are lucky. Bezos was insanely lucky, but there were other people that were insanely lucky at the same time. Only Bezos built Amazon and came out of that with what he did. Yeah, he had by pure luck of when he was doing things, he had a massive cash stockpile when no one else did. But he knew what to do with it. And he did it with purpose.
I think that's a lot of wisdom you shared too, because I even look back at past opportunities and things, and you look back like, oh God, if I only knew what I knew now.
Yeah.
Back then. But you're right. You got to be able to, opportunity may come. You may get very lucky. In fact, you're going to need luck. But what do you do with it? Do you know how to execute it?
Yeah.
When it comes?
Do you even see it when it comes? There's so many points in my life I can look back on now and I can say, oh man, I was so lucky that why didn't I realize that at that point in my life, I didn't even see the luck. And now I'm like, ooh, I missed that lucky opportunity.
Did you ever think about if you would have worked at Google?
It's a fun story. I try not to dwell on it.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I just try not to dwell on it. Like for example, do you remember the website eHow?
Mm-mm.
It was an early website. It kind of went away around 2012 or something. But it was like, do you remember Ask Jeeves?
Yeah.
It was the original Ask Jeeves. I think Ask Jeeves bought them. And I had an opportunity to I was in the room, like in their parents' house, strategizing the founding of eHow. And one of the original 6 people that were talking about it, and I had my chance to work with them or to work with a different startup. And I chose the other startup who went bust. And I'm like, whoa. They got acquired for hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm like, man, I was one of the 6 people in their parents' house creating a strategy of what it should be. And I said, no, I'm going to go someone else instead who went bust.
But like you say, I mean, there's probably some that are great ideas that everyone thinks are going to be the hits. It's kind of like when we are uploading our videos, the clips that we think are going to be, oh yeah, this for sure is going to be the one. Nothing. The one that you're like, oh yeah, let's just throw this up there.
Yeah.
Boo, 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 boo. I mean, there's a lot involved, right? There's so much involved. Like things change, markets change.
Yeah. I mean, Instagram. It was a it was a it was a co-location take photos of bourbon and whiskey app that the founder took the money and he was just like, we're going broke. I'm going to take my fiance and my other co-founder. We're all going to go on vacation somewhere nice. And then when I come back, I'm going to shut it down. He's walking down the beach with his fiance. And he's talking about how they're going to shut it down and stuff like that, and how all these photos are in it, how they're changing it into a photo app, it's just not taking off. And she's like, well, the problem is that all these professional photographers, all these sites for them, and all of their photos are so good. I don't want my photos to be next to them. If only there was a way that you can make my photos better, then I'd post to this app all day long because now my photos look professional. And then he went back. He's like, oh my God, went back to the hotel room, coded for the rest of the vacation, created the first photo filters, went back to San Francisco and recreated Instagram.
Wow. And they sold for $1 billion, I think.
Yeah. But they were shutting down. And if it wasn't for that walk with his fiance, now, if it was me doing that walk, I probably would have said, yeah, whatever. I'm going to go sulk some more and, look at the ocean and wax poetic and sit down on the sand. And you know what? I'm going to meditate and find a better self to get myself through this and find out my next journey in life. He looked at it a different perspective, went back, coded, and built Instagram.
It almost reminds me of that famous cartoon where it shows the guy the two guys mining for gold or diamonds, and one of them you see quits and he's turned around where he was like this close, and the other guy just keeps going. It's like, yeah, just having that ability after you've put so much effort and everything into something, when you're at that point of exhaustion and burnout, to have that clarity that he had, to be like, oh wait, yeah, we could do that.
That's the dream. But for every Instagram, every FedEx, every Bezos, there is 10,000 other people that you don't know their names.
Welcome to the acting community. Ryan, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about in our time here? Anything in particular, whether it's with your business or?
I'm curious about one other thing.
Okay.
And I just love hearing this story. When you made that jump, I'm doing this full time. What was not just, the planning behind it? What was the feeling? What was like going through like your heart at that moment?
I can answer that too. And that's a more so what really pushed me, so my one corporate job had come to an end. I was going through the starting to interview for other jobs and stuff. And, not like being over, like it wasn't taking up all my time. I was being leisurely about it somewhat, but I started to ramp it up and go, okay, let me really start interviewing here and going through that. And that process had become brutal from years ago. I'm just like, God, this is just brutal. It takes so much time. Like, you don't even know if you're talking to people, yada, yada, yada. I had gotten to the end stage of a particular job that would have been a pretty good job. And they went with the person who had more experience in that area. But hey, you made it to the end. Good job, type of thing. And I was sitting in the Studio City Ralph's over here in the parking lot when the recruiter called and told me. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, huh. There was a lot of time invested into that. A lot. And I'm like, what? And this is right before this podcast conference was coming to town. I'm like, why am I putting so much effort and energy into this? Obviously, you got to pay bills and survive. I'm like, what if for the rest of this year, I just put all this effort and energy into myself? Because previously I'd always been one, I lived the artist's life, but it was almost like outside of my day job. I would have my day job and then have to morph into another person, like kind of like Clark Kent, Superman type, but I always felt like I was living this double identity life. But when that feeling, I'm glad you asked that. The first time I got to go on my LinkedIn and put my podcast on there and take off everything else, that was a great feeling because, I can be myself now everywhere. I no longer have to play this game of, if you're in a work situation, not really talking about it, and vice versa. If I'm at an event or some kind, not talking about work, it's like, no, this is who I am 24/7 now. That was a great feeling.
And what would I have to pay you to give up that feeling, to take that feeling from you? What would I have to pay you?
Gosh.
I think the
Probably
pause.
300,000-400,000 at least.
Is that it?
Because I'm still going to do my thing with
Yeah.
that. Because what I've done now is I've laid so much groundwork. I know what I can do with all that capital.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sam's going to be gone for the next whatever, but I can hire at least a couple people. I know what I could do with that.
But you see, you cheated. What would you pay? How much could I pay you to just take that feeling that you had out of your life?
Oh, take the actual feeling, not
Yeah.
pay to give. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
What would I have to pay you if we're on some weird episode of Black Mirror where I could do that?
I honestly don't know if I would take it then, because by doing that, I'm removing who I am. Like I'm removing the way I get to live.
And that, my friend, is the answer to what's a founder. So you need a founder to answer that question, really. So yeah, that's the answer. That's what a founder is. An entrepreneur will have a number band that I would have given you roughly in the ballpark $6 million. You can rep that flame right out of $6 million. I would have blinked.
Take my heart, take my dreams, and throw it down the toilet.
$6 million now. Yeah, find new dreams. Founder, no. You won't trade it for anything.
Yeah, and it's a rough road too, because once the honeymoon phase wears off of it, like it does with all things, relationship, anything. Anytime that newness comes off of it and you sit in the reality of it, that's when you're really tested. I have been very tested with it. But when you put it like that, I'm glad you asked, because yeah, you are right. It's not, if you have to remove that from me, then I'm already dead in a way.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the point then? Because I rebel and I deflect that type of living anyway, of living the safe route and the standard way of the society will tell you to live. It's like, well, no, I'd rather be like this, just as long as I can pay rent and eat.
And that's what a founder is.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I would have said $6 million. You got it. Take it.
Is that your number? Is that your number for you?
I would probably say today, $6 million. It fluctuates between probably 5 million and 30 million, somewhere in there. I say, yeah, I'll find a new dream.
Because I think too, and I'll get your take on this. Have you ever seen a founder who went all in? They're keeping it going, but they've simply just run out of resources. Like they've run out of everything and they've had to go take that job, but they keep the dream alive. Like, and that was more my mindset when you asked me that. You're like, oh, well, how much would it cost me to take a job? Well, if I take a job for that amount, yes, my time's going to be gone, but I know I can keep everything floating and going.
I've seen founders who do that all the time, but they keep it going. I've seen founders who their whole goal is, as soon as they get that first offer, they want to cash out. And there is a difference in those two. You know that you can see the difference all along in that person who the first time they get the first offer, they'll cash out. 100% you see the difference in them. Now, that's not to say every founder who sells is selling out. But, most founders do sell. But there's a difference between, there's this difference you can see between a founder who's like, okay, this is a logical place for this to go now. This is a logical next step in the journey, versus the founder who says, okay, I am building this company because I think I can get a lot of money for it in 3 years, and I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And give me that lot of money in 3 years, and I'm happy.
Bezos talks about, like he talked about when he bought Whole Foods. I forgot his name, who founded Whole Foods, but you know who I'm talking about. He said when he makes decisions to buy companies, he goes, am I buying from a mercenary or a missionary?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I like to buy from missionaries. He goes, because a mercenary is what you describe. Like, we're just building this thing, quick turn and burn, make money, we're out. The missionary, like when, what's his name, started Whole Foods, he believed in that. Like he believed in people eating healthier and having this environment. And Bezos said he met with him one time or whatever it was. And he's like, he knew it right away. He's like, no, he truly is a missionary for this. I want that.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can, it's hard to articulate, but you can see the difference in the first few minutes of a conversation between different types of people.
We have a acting teacher. I was in acting class once, and it reminds me of what he said. He said that he meets up with colleagues down the road who gave up acting, just didn't want to do it anymore, got frustrated with it. They loved it, but I can't do this anymore. I'll never forget this. He said he looks at them in their eyes and a piece of them is dead. He's like, a piece of them is dead. I can tell because I knew them back when they had that light, that passion. So I think it's probably similar for the founders and
it's not similar. It's the exact same thing.
Exact same thing.
It's just a different manifestation of it. Flip side is, the funny thing is two of my daughters, I have 3 daughters. 2 of my daughters went to a high school in LA called LACSA, LA County School for the Arts, I think it is. It's there's 2 of these high schools in the country. One is LACSA and one is the school in New York that fame is created from. And you go there and you spend you spend 3 hours in academics, and then you spend 5 hours or 6 hours a day on acting or playing the violin, stuff like that. People graduate from that school and go on to college, and their college rate is insane. It's like 90% of the kids go on to college. The 10% who don't become professional artists in their field, straight from high school. But most of them that go to college, is something like 70% go on to college to become lawyers and accountants, because they've had 4 years of being immersed in what it's like to be in that. And they're like, you know what? We love it. It'll always be a part of us. But it's just, we've realized that one little, that thing that your acting teacher was talking about isn't there. And they know that they're not going to die on the sword. And so they're like, you know what? I'll become a lawyer or an accountant in entertainment. And I'll keep on going on, and I'll join choirs, and I'll, do the plays on, the smaller playhouses once a year, or the Shakespeare in the Park company, stuff like that. But yeah, because they realized they don't have that one little intangible spark that you're talking about.
I think that's a brilliant insight. And I think even as we're talking it too, I think too, it goes to show that I think the most talented a lot of times in anything aren't the ones who are there at the end. It's the ones that maybe didn't have as much talent, but they had enough to keep it going, but they had that persistence and that spark.
Yeah.
To say, I'm not giving up. Like, I'm going to keep going at this. Yeah. I'm going to figure this out. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know how it's going to happen. I may fail a bunch, but I'm going to figure this out eventually.
Yeah. Same thing goes for sports. Look at in LA, look at Kobe Bryant. He wasn't the biggest. He wasn't the most talented. He wasn't the strongest. He didn't have the best vertical leap. But he had the drive to practice and perfect. And 30%, he practiced roughly 30% more than everyone else did. And he just had a certain intangible drive in him that no one else had, that turned him into one of the best players ever. But everybody who knew him starting out will tell you the exact same thing. Even he said it. Wasn't the fastest. He was fast, wasn't the fastest. Wasn't the most athletic. Wasn't the most talented. Didn't have the best jump. But 3 years down the road, because of that thing that your person owned the eye, because of that, 3 years down the road, he was the fastest. He was the strongest. He was the best.
Mamba mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing it was in the Redeem Team documentary, 2008, when the USA had lost in 2004, and so I think Kobe was the last one to come on. I could have that wrong, but they had assembled the new Dream Team, and Kobe's like, "Okay, I'm coming on for that veteran leadership." And the guys were talking about, it was in Vegas where they were practicing, and they had been out at the club all night. They were going back to the rooms like at 4 a.m., 4:30. As they're in their club clothes, going to the elevators to go up, Kobe Bryant's coming down with the gym bag, dressed in gym clothes, heading to the weight room. Like they had been out all night partying. I mean, he just had that, like you said, like, and I heard stories of him just even before games shooting just thousands of shots. So yeah, to your point.
Yeah.
It's in him, like that Michael Jordan-esque, like that's something that they both possessed.
Yeah.
You know,
I was at a conference or something, and it was a talk of a person who, I don't know, was Kobe Bryant's accountant or something. And he showed up one time at the house to do something, and he's like, he'd been to the house a lot of times. He never saw Kobe. He assumed Kobe was never home. Until one time he's like, okay, I hear this rhythmic thud, 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 and I frequently hear it. What is it? It's this thud, thud, thud. And Kobe's wife goes, oh, you're always here during this time. Kobe's doing his 400 push passes out in the attached gym. Every day at a certain time, if he was home, he would stop and just do the most basic 400 push passes.
wow.
I might have the actual number wrong, but yeah, every day he did that.
And it's the little things like that that add up.
Yep.
The fundamentals.
Wow. So we were all the way from Ayn Rand to Kobe Bryant and Star Wars.
This is one hell of a podcast, my friend. Well, this has been a treat. Thank you so much for coming on. Before I give you the last word and all of that, where can people find you? If people want to get a hold of you, stalk you, potentially work with you, where should they go?
Well, usually I try to. I mean, Marcus this out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. You can always catch me in hot yoga. Friday night, you can catch me at McLeod's Bar for pizza. Saturday nights, hit me up at the Tiki Room for a drink. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me. Buy me a beer, and I'm always happy. If not for that, you can find us on our website, camino5.com. I'm all over LinkedIn. One warning. If you look for Ryan Edwards on LinkedIn, it's the most common. My full name was the most common name for a male in the United States, Ryan James Edwards. And if you look for me on LinkedIn, you get Ryan Edwards, who happens to have been one of the stars on MTV's 16 and Pregnant, and also one of the stars on MTV Celebrity Rehab. That is not me. I am not 16 and I am not pregnant. Yeah. Website, camino5.com. LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And besides that, easy enough email, Ryan@camino5.com.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, this has been a pleasure. I always enjoy my conversations with you. Thank you so much. I always give the guests the last word. It can be as deep, as shallow, funny, not funny. It can be absolutely anything you want. How would you like to end this podcast?
Word.
There it is. Ryan Edwards, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's great.
Hi, everyone. Sam Dever, the Sam Dever Podcast here, and I just want to thank you for checking out this episode. To watch and listen to future episodes, be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@thesamdeverpodcast. Thank you so much. See you soon.